I want to recap segment 2, and there are 4 things I want you to remember from this segment. That the pro-oxidant domains on these antioxidant molecules can upregulate protective chemicals in our cells that last for hours and days, beyond antioxidants. The second thing I want you to remember is watercress as an anti-aging salad. If you want to have beautiful skin, be wrinkle-free, and prevent the onset of aging, watercress is the key. Item number 3, spices control inflammation. They are protective of all of our organ systems and can be another strategy to prevent the breakdown of the mitochondria as we age and subsequent cytopathic hypoxia. And finally, I want you to remember that cocoa and chocolate are better than love. It will never let you down. When we return for segment 3, I'm going to use all this information that we've talked about, we use in our daily lives, for the new metabolic diet miracle. Because remember, obesity is one of the inflammatory diseases. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to our third and final segment of the lecture today. And as I promised you in segment 2, we're going to be talking about a metabolic miracle. And I know it sounds like hyperbole, but actually I'm very excited about this. And I think it's going to be kind of a mainstream approach to fighting the fat. The anti-inflammatory diet I originally designed, as you know, to attenuate the aging process. How can we slow that down? And the anti-inflammatory diet, of course, is the ultimate way to fight the changes in the mitochondria, which we call cytopathic hypoxia, which we saw in the intensive care unit, but we see it prolonged in aging. What I noticed when patients were on the anti-inflammatory diet, who were doing it to look better and feel better, they tended to lose weight even though that was not our goal. And they lost weight if they had excess body fat. And the interesting thing was, if it was a person who had just a little bit of weight to lose, 10 pounds would come off. If they had a lot to lose and they stayed with the anti-inflammatory diet, 50 or 60 or more pounds would come off. But what interested me was, at the end of this weight loss, they still looked absolutely radiant. And I think we've all had the experience of seeing someone we haven't seen in a while, and they've lost 20, 30 pounds, and they look awful. They're drawn, and you say, oh, you lost weight, congratulations. Meanwhile, you're thinking like, oh my God, you should have kept the weight on. What's happening in every diet except the anti-inflammatory diet is that 50% of the weight loss is coming from muscle mass. And there's some very good reasons for that. Insulin stores body fat, and if you have high levels of insulin, it puts a lock on your body fat. And so you could eat almost nothing during the day, but if you're eating something that's high glycemic, it's going to keep you from losing weight. What happens with people that actually have excess weight in them, they're always carrying higher insulin levels. And so there are receptors on the surface of the cell for insulin, and they actually downregulate. So there's less receptors because there's so much insulin. And when they go on a diet, their insulin levels drop, and insulin is anabolic. Insulin puts on muscle. Okay, anabolic is to build up, catabolic is to break down. Without seeing as much insulin as they used to, and with the insulin receptors downregulated, they go into a catabolic state and they lose muscle mass. And so the problem with that is obviously you need muscle, you look lousy after the weight loss, and you tend to regain your weight because you're trying to feed yourself back to health. The difference between the anti-inflammatory diet is, since excess weight is an inflammatory problem, we treat the inflammation first. And when you treat the inflammation first, insulin remains at a healthy level, but the system isn't downregulated. Let me explain. We know that inflammation creates, and free radicals create, a lot of activity of NF-kappa B, the bad transcription factor. We found that NF-kappa B blocks the effects of insulin. So if we treat the inflammation first, we get more insulin sensitivity, we maintain good blood sugar, and the body fat will fall off while we maintain muscle mass because we're not going into a catabolic state. We still have the anabolic effect of insulin because we're reading it. Scientists used to think that fat was just storage of energy. It was an inert portion of our body. But it's actually not inert, it's very active. Fat is an endocrine organ. It's putting out hormones. And these hormones are called adipokines. And adipokines send messages to all different parts of the body. Adipokines can be pro-inflammatory. So when we see people who diet, they not only lose muscle mass, which doctors call sarcopenia, but they lose bone density as well. So we have to be extremely careful because there's all these hidden dangers of the normal kind of dieting process. You want to treat the inflammation first. If fat is present, it also is like little pro-inflammatory factories. It's pumping out pro-inflammatory cytokines. And so pumps out cytokines, NF-kappa B goes up, blocks insulin, blood sugar goes up, stores more body fat, more inflammation. It's a cycle. And so we have to break that cycle by treating the inflammation first. The anti-inflammatory diet works beautifully because we're not trying to limit our food intake. We're just selecting foods that are good for us. And we're turning the inflammation off. I was so interested in the subject, and I was actually inspired in doing something a little bit differently because I have a relative of mine who is morbidly obese. And morbid obesity is defined as being 100% over your ideal body weight. And he's way over 100%. And he has a problem with food. And I wanted him to lose weight. I wanted him to do it in a healthy manner, but I wanted to do it rapidly, but that was going to take care of the psychological aspects of this kind of moribund obesity. And so I thought about, over the years, there were many meal replacement diets out there, but they were never adequate for a number of reasons, and main reasons they're not anti-inflammatory. If you're to diet and you're to maintain muscle mass, you've got to get enough protein. On the days you don't eat enough protein are the days you age, but you'll also be losing muscle mass as you diet. And one thing you should know, if we're not aware of this inflammatory problem that goes up as we get older, that for every decade of life, we lose 5 pounds of muscle mass and gain 10 pounds of body fat. And we can circumvent that by just knowing what we're doing. I wanted to find a meal replacement drink that had fantastic protein, and there was an old measure used for protein efficiency. It was called protein efficiency ratio. And certain proteins are highly efficient because they're absorbed by the body and they're maintained, and other proteins are not that great. So we know vegetable proteins are not efficient as animal proteins many times for a complete amino acid profile. But I was looking for a meal replacement, came across something called albumin. Now, albumin is the main protein in the serum, blood serum. And we know as physicians that high serum levels of albumin mean good health. And we see lower levels as we're not as healthy and as we get older. So I looked at egg albumin, which is egg white, as a possible source of protein. Egg white scores 100% on the protein efficiency ratio scale, or biologic availability. Has all the essential amino acids. But egg whites have to be dealt with carefully. First of all, they could be contaminated by bacteria like Salmonella. Secondly, egg whites contain a substance called avidin, A-V-I-D-I-N, that blocks a B vitamin called biotin. And if you're taking egg whites, it will block biotin, you'll get a biotin deficiency. But if you pasteurize those egg whites, pasteurize, not cook, okay? If you pasteurize those egg whites, you destroy the avidin, you don't get a biotin deficiency. The reason I emphasize pasteurize is because when you cook albumin, it cross-links, and the protein efficiency ratio drops from 100% down to about 70%. Now, why is that important? When you sip the egg albumin that's been pasteurized,